I drive around and I look through the windows, and then it dawns on me.
Power to Live More with Joe Dodds.
Welcome to the Power to Live More podcast, all about productivity, organisation, well-being, energy and resilience. I'm Jo Dodds, and I started this show to enable interesting people to share their stories about how they use their power to live more, and by that I mean to do the stuff that they want to do more than the stuff that they need to or should do. It's about creating a life for yourself where you have the energy, health and space to be happy and fulfilled, spending your time as you'd like, whether that be at work, home or somewhere else entirely. That's your choice.
Hello. My name is Ellie Dodds and I'm co-presenter, and today Joe's interviewing Henry Daas. Henry found our podcast and we were glad to invite him on. He is a serial entrepreneur of 30 years, business and finance coach, author of FQ Financial Intelligence. Back to the studio.
Today I'm interviewing Henry Daas of Daas Knowledge. Welcome. Thanks for joining me, Henry.
Glad to be here, Joe.
Lovely. So tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, and where you do it.
Okay, so clearly I'm a Yank. I'm an American. I work out of my home in New Jersey. My backstory, pretty simple. Spent 30 years as an entrepreneur. Had 6, 7, 8 companies, sort of lost count. About 8, 9 years ago, I started coaching. So now I coach entrepreneurs. I also coach folks in personal finance, entrepreneurs and regular folks alike. I wrote a book called FQ Financial Intelligence, which I released last fall, and I sell a course around it. And I do all sorts of other stuff. I write screenplays, and I write 2 blogs. I do a lot of writing, and I do a lot of podcasts. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So some of this podcast is about how you go about organising yourself. So I'm looking forward to hearing that, because it sounds like you've got a lot going on.
Yes, you and me both.
So where are you based, Henry?
A little town called Mountainside, New Jersey.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And you said you work from home already. Do you have a specific office set up for?
I do. I have I call it my war room. It's like an office that I built in my basement. It's full of computers. People come in here and they laugh because I have about 10 computers and about 30 monitors. Because I can't have a computer with just one monitor on it. So they all have at least 3. Some have as many as 5 or 6. And they do different, they serve different purposes. So.
Yes, very good. So what did you want to do when you left school? Did you plan to be doing what you're doing now?
Well, I always thought I would be an entrepreneur. A lot of entrepreneurs in my family, a lot of professional people, doctors and lawyers. So I felt that running my own business was in my future. But I also knew that I wanted to work for somebody else for a little while, just to get some, for lack of a better term, some free training. Just sort of see what the world is like, get a paycheck, to kind of be able to live in cubicle world for a little while. I mean, I knew it wasn't a long-term solution for me, knowing what I know about myself. So when the opportunity arose, I was probably 31. I'm 61 now, so 30 years ago. I grabbed it, right? And I said, and I never looked back.
So it's interesting when you think about how long ago that was. Now, if somebody said what you've just said to me, which was, I knew I wanted to work for myself and in the end it was going to happen, all that sort of stuff, that would be quite common, and maybe even sort of 10 or 20 years ago. But when you were doing that, it wasn't, it was still quite a traditional time in terms of, you go to college, you get a job, you have a career, you go up the ladder. What made you think, how did you know at the time that was likely to be what was going to happen with you? Because it was unusual for your cohort, I'm imagining.
It was. Right now, you got to remember, this is, I founded my first company in 1991. So it's pre-internet, pre-cell phone. We had computers, but we were doing stuff on, spreadsheets and Word documents. We had a fax machine, so that was like, we died and went to heaven because we have a fax. We had some dial-up, what they called EDI systems, which were these proprietary systems to connect to vendors, but they were very, very specific. So it was kind of a primitive time. So the barriers to entry for entrepreneurship were higher. I mean, they've always been high, but they were higher then. Where now, if you decided tomorrow you wanted to be an Amazon affiliate and create a relationship with a vendor in China, assuming, putting the pandemic aside, there are very little barriers to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can do it, and they can do it from the comfort of their own home.
Yeah.
That we couldn't do. I mean, I was talking about this with some folks of my vintage. We were saying, what if this pandemic had struck during the 80s?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Work from home, this and that. I mean, it would have been a whole different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I didn't miss a beat. I already work remotely. I already work with people in Australia and Japan and Thailand and Montenegro and Costa Rica. I mean, all over. I was used to being on Zoom. Friends were asking me, what's this Zoom thing people are talking about? It's like, it's a thing, and it makes it really, really easy to communicate. So.
Yeah. So your transition from running businesses to coaching, again, that's not something that everybody does, and sometimes if you're a doer, it's hard to then become someone who helps and encourages other people to do, but actually doesn't do it for them, if you like. How did that come about?
I sold my business. I was turning 50. My mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. My mother-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. This was 2010. So everything kind of came to a boil at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we moved, we sold our house, we kind of pivoted our life. I've been married for 30 years. I guess it'll be 30 years this New Year's. 3 boys, they're 2 are graduated, one's in college, going to be a sophomore. But at that time, 10 years ago, we were in the throes of it. Grammar school, high school, college. So everything was spinning round and round. So I took a step back after all of that went through. I've always traded the public markets, the equity markets. I could make a living as a trader if I wanted to. I've been doing it since I was in high school, and I manage a book of money. It's just boring, right? You don't really get to interact with other humans. So I did that for a little while as a placeholder, and then I kind of sat down and said, what do I want to do? Right? I've already started a bunch of entrepreneurial businesses. Do I want to start another one? Or do I want to do maybe something that pivots a little bit differently? So what's interesting is I talk about I'm writing a book about business right now, and I talk about 2 different origin stories for businesses. One is what I call the accidental business, or to put a prettier face on it, we'll call it opportunistic. And the other is the purposeful business, where you actually sit down and write out kind of a plan. What do I want to see out of the business? All of my previous businesses, or most of them, had been opportunistic businesses, right? Some low-hanging fruit came my way. I said, yeah, I can do that. And I started a business. And a lot of your listeners are probably in that same situation, right? They look back and they say, how did I get started here? It was kind of an accident. But coaching was different. I sat down and I said, okay, I want to be location independent. And pretty soon I'm going to be an empty nester. There's a whole wide world that I can explore. I don't want to be tied to an office. I had an office in New York City for 15 years. It's like, I don't want to do that anymore, right? I want to be able to work, with who I want, when I want. I don't want to be responsible for the balance sheet and income statement other than my little enterprise, right? So if I work with an entrepreneur, I know all about their financial stuff, but it's their responsibility. They make the decisions, right? I get to act like, the gray hair in the enterprise. That was very, very appealing to me. And the fact that if I go to Europe, I can't go to Europe now because they won't take my passport. But if I go to Asia, I can just get on Skype or Zoom and continue my operation. All I've done is time shifted, and otherwise it works seamlessly. That's really appealing to me at my age.
Yes, yeah. And what does a typical day look like for you? And I know there'll be untypical, but what sort of things are happening as the day progresses?
Well, that's interesting because one of the things that I found really appealing about entrepreneurship is every day is different. For that short period of time when I worked in Cubicle World, and I worked for a subsidiary of the New York Stock Exchange as a programmer, every day was pretty much the same. It wasn't a lot of variation, working in the same place, doing the same stuff. Where now every day's different. This morning, we had this power outage yesterday, so the power didn't come on until after midnight. We're sleeping, and all of a sudden, all the lights go on, right? Because the power came back, which is interesting. It's like, oh well, the good news is the power's back. The bad news is you just woke me up.
We had our own version of that the other week. I was telling you before we came on. Yeah. We had a power cut, and my mother-in-law went home. She lives next door, and she went home, and she said she sat in the dark for about 3 hours, wondering why the power hadn't yet come on. And then she realised that, of course, she hadn't switched any of her lights on because when the power had gone off, she'd been at our house.
Well, it was funny. I'll digress for a minute. We've been through power outages before. You want to keep the refrigerators closed. You want to keep everything cold because you don't know how long it's going to last, right? Yeah. Sometimes we've had them for multiple days and food will stay, won't spoil if you just keep the refrigerator closed for like 3 days. So I went out to get something to eat. So I went to the drive-thru at McDonald's because I drove by and the lights are all on and people are queued up. And I'm sitting there in line and nothing's happening. And then all of a sudden somebody leaves and another person leaves and we're all sitting there and there's nobody attending to ask you what your order is. Yeah. And the place is lit up like a Christmas tree. So I drive over to the window where you have to pay. There's nobody there. I drive to the next window and there's nobody there. I drive around and I look through the windows and then it dawns on me. Well, the power went out. Everybody left. Nobody shut the lights off. And when the power came on, the whole place is lit up.
It looks like they're open.
Golden Arches is lit up. But I said it was like I told my wife it was like the zombie apocalypse,
Yeah, of course.
Like everybody was gone. I started laughing. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's a phantom McDonald's. But it's amazing how long I stood there. I sat there for five minutes with 5 other cars in a queue waiting for somebody to come on the line. So anyway, so I got up at 6 o'clock this morning and I write a couple blogs. So I write a personal blog and I write a business blog, and I like to write a couple things in each. And so I had an idea for something to write. So I basically started at 6 o'clock this morning and I wrote for about 3 hours. So that's how I started my day. And that's not unusual for that to happen. You write when you're inspired. That way you never get writer's block, right? Mm-hmm. Because you write when you got something to write. And if you're not writing, I'm not blocked. I'm just not writing. Right?
Yeah.
So, then I've got this podcast, and I have a client call in about an hour after this, and then I have another client call, and then I have to go to the gym, and then I have another podcast. So that's today, Wednesday. Tomorrow will be something different.
Yes,
I like that. It constantly keeps me on my toes. It keeps my brain plastic, as I like to say. Some people don't deal well with that at all. They want structure. I know at 9 a.m. I'm going to have my coffee, and at 9:30 I'm going to do this, and 10 o'clock I'm going to do that. That would drive me crazy.
Yes, yeah.
I couldn't operate that way.
So how do you make sure you get done what you need to get done? Because as you say, one of the advantages is all that flexibility, but flexibility can quite easily move into not really getting things done.
Well, yes, you're exactly right. You can be busy but not productive, right? Right. I've talked to people who are, constantly busy and overwhelmed, but they're never moving the ball forward. So I'm like that little, the image that I have is like that little carnival game with the metal horses, and you have a squirt gun, and people compete, and those horses, they move across. Well, all the various tasks that you have to do are kind of like those horses there, and they move in little fits and spurts, right? So there's a little bit that I have to do with marketing, and there's a little bit I have to do with content creation, and then there's things that I have to do to service my clients, and then there's other things I have to do for some masterminds that I run. I guess after years of doing it and understanding it, it all flows very naturally for me. I can contact shift, but what I don't do is multitask, meaning if I'm working on writing a piece like I was this morning, I'm working on writing that piece. I'm not in the middle of it now hopscotching over to something else. I stay focused on it.
Yeah.
I can stay focused if I'm writing, I can stay focused for a couple solid hours without being distracted. I know that enough about myself. But then when I get to a logical break point on that, I'll put it aside, and it's like, okay, now I have to work on this.
Yeah.
And I make lists. I've even gone so far as to actually track all of this. I built a database, and I created my own system for time tracking. So I would annotate when I started a task, and then when I started the next task, I would annotate that. The assumption was that if a new task started, the other one was finished. And it would then keep track of it and calculate the time that I spent. So at the end of the week, I could say, oh, I spent 3 hours and 42 minutes replying to emails. That's a little anal, and I don't know if to create those kind of KPIs or analytics, if there's a value to it. If you're going to glean something from it, great. Otherwise, it's what's the point of the exercise, right?
Well, funny you say that. I was wondering. I was about to ask you, and now I'm wondering I was going to ask you how you can focus for 2 hours, because I think in this day and age that's really unusual. And I wonder whether you've trained yourself to do so by measuring your sort of activity and your focus, and whether that's actually helped you to do that.
I think it's actually, that's kind of the cart coming after the horse. The measuring sort of came afterwards. It's a very interesting question. I think for me, it goes back to, again, that time in my 20s, back in the 1980s, where I was a computer programmer. I mean, I remember having to write this program on a really tight deadline. I remember one day coding from 9 o'clock in the morning until probably 11 o'clock at night. And other than maybe 1 or 2 bio breaks, I never left my chair.
Yeah.
I just sat there and tunnel visioned on this. Same thing when I'm writing a piece, or if I'm writing a story, I write screenplays. I've written 11 screenplays. Not unusual for me to just be immersed in it. And that's hard to do if, there's techniques out there. They call them, there's a guy, Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, who you might have heard of. He's out of Canada. He talks about buffer days and free days and different sort of structured stuff. If your brain works like that, you could be successful. But otherwise, you kind of have to figure it out organically. Yeah. I mean, I've done the exercise with folks where we try to determine optimal work times. So, for instance, if I get a new coaching client, I'll ask them, you a morning person, afternoon person, evening person, and I tailor my schedule around it so that I get them at their optimum productivity. But some people don't have the answer. They don't really know. They've never thought about it. So I'll go through the exercise of, let's do 2 weeks. I want you to track your time so we can figure out where your optimal times are and where your slack times are. And then we look at, what are you doing during those optimal times? If you're answering emails during those optimal times, you have to ask yourself, is that really how you should be allocating things? There's a mismatch there, right?
Yes.
Do critical functions when you're at your highest functioning. Answer emails after lunch, right? When you kind of have that full belly and that little post lunch malaise. Why would I try to focus on some hypercritical task? There's a disconnect there.
Yes.
So you can go through the exercise of figuring that out. Me, I'm a morning person and an evening person. So I can be hyper focused in the morning and hyper focused in the evening. Where I struggle is the sort of the middle of the day, the shank of the day. There is a time where that's when I'm doing, stupid stuff that I don't need to do. When it's critical.
Yes. Yeah. So moving a bit more specific about getting things done, what sort of tools and apps would you say that you couldn't live without?
I used to use something called Wunderlist, but I don't know that Wunderlist is even around. I think it's now a Microsoft product. I'll use an old-fashioned pen and paper, and I keep a notebook. In fact, I have stacks of notebooks that I may write something on a Post-it, I may write it on a scrap of paper, and I kind of paste them in there chronologically as just reminders. It's not like a bullet journal. They're not in any particularly organized fashion. They're just little reminders of things.
Yes.
So that's part of what I do. But then I have sort of the big list. I use a program called Scrivener, which is a writing program.
Yeah.
So I do keep a sort of a Scrivener notebook with different headings. I also use OneNote. So all my coaching calls, they're all organized in OneNote. So every client has their own section, and every session, I take notes. I take them on an iPad. I like to handwrite my notes. So that's all very, very organized. And then I also keep a database, a FileMaker Pro database that I custom built that keeps track of all the stuff that's sort of client related.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of different tools. There's no Swiss Army knife for that, right? Depending on what it is that you're trying to do. And I always have a bunch of different balls. So, I'm writing a book, I'm writing the 2 different blogs. And then I'm looking up a lot of information for various clients because we're all in different kinds of businesses. So I have to be conversant in that. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'll chop the day up and compartmentalize it. Hour here, 90 minutes there. But if I need a really extended period of time, that's either going to be early in the morning when everybody's sleeping, or it's going to be late at night when everybody's sleeping.
There's a common theme there. I get that.
Well, I've got 3 kids. All 3 of my boys in the house now with the pandemic, which I haven't had in probably 12 years.
Yeah. So lots of food being consumed, I would guess, if my nephews are anything to go by.
Trust me. Although I'd say the net of it is because we generally tend to eat out a little bit too much.
Yeah.
I'm saving money.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the things I don't always ask all my guests, but bearing in mind you've had businesses in the past as well, have you got any tips for delegating and sharing and outsourcing what you do? You sound like you work quite independently currently. How have you worked with people in the past? How would you recommend people work with other people?
Oh yeah, no, that's huge. I wrote a little piece that's a little 25-page PDF that's on my website that I give away for free. I call it the 5 reasons small businesses fail. And the number 2 reason is hiring, right? Hiring for so many people is just their Achilles heel. Because if you hire somebody, you must manage them, right? It's incumbent upon you to manage them. But people want to hire somebody, stick them in a corner, and let them go do something so that they can work on what they want to work on with minimal interaction, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but does that ever really work out? I mean, yeah, every once in a while you do. You find somebody who's independent, right, and a go-getter and gets everything done right. Those people become future entrepreneurs. They're not going to stick around, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost self-fulfilling. You're minting yourself a new entrepreneur because they have all of the attributes. So yeah, understanding the difference between being a doer and being a manager, really, really big thing. I think it's a fool's errand to hire somebody and expect that they're going to learn everything by osmosis. Mm-hmm. But if you're a doer, right, not a manager, that's going to be tough. It may not fit your core competencies. So you got to make a choice here. You can only scale your business so far as a solopreneur, right? Yeah. One of the reasons I wrote my financial literacy book was after talking to a whole bunch of coaches and saying, I don't have a way to scale my business because I only take between 8 to 12 clients because I work one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And I had always wanted to do something in the financial arena. So I can do group coaching around finance a lot more easily than I can do group coaching around entrepreneurship, even though I'm now working with a guy to do curated masterminds. So to try to get the best of both worlds. Mm. But anyway, getting back to your question, delegating. Think about the process that goes on when you delegate something. I'm looking to hire a VA right now to do LinkedIn outreach. So what do I have to do in order to ensure that that's a successful relationship? I got to build some SOPs for them, right? Standard operating procedure. Mm-hmm. Here's how Henry likes to do stuff, right? Here is what my expectations are of you, right? You've got to do this and you've got to do that. Here are the sort of inflection points in the relationship where you're initially going to have to seek guidance from me on how to proceed. But then eventually you're going to have to learn that and anticipate, oh, I've seen this before. I know what Henry wants. And then eventually you'll get to the point where they understand almost like osmosis what it is that you want.
Yes. Yeah.
That process takes time. You should be able to do that, at least when it comes to hiring a virtual assistant, within about 90 days, right? Depending on the level that's required for the task. But VAs, you're not going to give VAs, the VA is not the CEO of your company. They're not making super high level strategic decisions, right? That's your job.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I want you in the sales and marketing silo, as I call it. And these are the things that I want you to focus on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when they come to you, you've got to coach them up and you've got to teach them, right? They're coming to you for a reason, is because they don't know what to do. Now, what are the telltale signs that the situation's not working out? Well, when they keep coming back to you repetitively for stuff that you've gone over.
Yeah.
So what do? Tell them to add that to the SOP, right? Here's a situation that arose. You're gonna have 90% of what they'll do in almost any job will be cookie cutter stuff, but it's the 10% that's vexing, right? All the one-offs. Here's a situation that occurred, but it's a one-off. That's okay. You still have to write a paragraph about what to do when that situation arises, even if it doesn't come up for another 2 years, right? It's the reason companies spend so much money on creating FAQs and knowledge bases online. It's because they want to be able to accumulate that wisdom so that it's available. And then they want to encourage people to use it because it saves them money and it saves them resources. Mm-hmm. Same rules apply in a small business. You don't get off the hook because you're a solopreneur.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Make sense?
Yeah. And as you say, I mean, the real key thing is that whole standard operating procedure piece, which I think often is the bit that people procrastinate on doing in the first place, but which is why often the outsourcing and delegation doesn't happen.
It's because it's work. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, you're telling me I got to sit down and write up a procedure for somebody else? You know what? How about I just do it myself because the procedure's in my head and it's just easier? Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, but that's not scalable.
No, exactly.
Just, do you want to scale your business or not? My coaching business, I really don't have much interest in scaling it. I'm a solopreneur. If I don't work, my clients don't get serviced. The whole thing falls apart. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with that, right? That's fine. However, I do have a vision in my head, as someone at 61 years old who gets invited to retirement parties. There's a lot of talent out there for people. I could create an agency out of it if I chose to. Maybe not now, but sometime in the future, I could grab guys who are super smart guys, teach them the coaching side of things and say, you were a master salesman for 40 years. You come in and join me and you can be specifically a sales coach and do it from the comfort of your own home. That could be very appealing to someone who's left corporate America, but isn't ready to move to Shady Acres, you know?
Yeah. So what about learning and improving yourself? You've changed businesses over the time, and you're now doing something where you need to be able to, I guess, think on your feet as you work with people. How do you keep up to speed and learning and moving forward yourself?
You're familiar with Strength Finders?
I absolutely am. Yeah.
Marcus Buckingham came out with that book years ago. I saw him talk. I've taken that twice. It always comes out the same. Number one thing is learner. For me, I just want to learn everything that I can possibly learn, right? If I'd known that I was going to have the accumulated knowledge of everyone who's ever existed in the palm of my hand in an iPhone, maybe I would have thought differently about that when I was younger.
Yeah.
But I like to learn things just for, it used to be just for the sake of learning. Now I take the stuff that I've learned and I'm trying to create new knowledge from it, right? No point of being Jeopardy smart unless you want to go on Jeopardy. You know, that might make a nice parlor trick or something like that, amaze your friends, or be really good at Trivial Pursuit or a board game or something. But if you can't take that accumulated knowledge and turn it into new knowledge, it's just, I don't know what it's there for. It's just dusty old knowledge that I could look up on my iPhone. Right? So
and therein lies the challenge of the whole education system nowadays.
Well, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit. I don't know what it's like on the other side of the pond. But, you know, we have colossal issues here. I'd say probably the biggest one is the idea that universities are not teaching critical thinking. It's amazing how many people I meet and have conversations with, and they are just skimming along the surface.
Yeah.
Right. They're not asking the probative questions. They're not looking for the subtext. As a screenwriter, you live with subtext. As a coach, you live with subtext. What is my client not telling me? Right? My job is I have to figure that out. I got to read the tea leaves. That's not just going to come to you, right? Anybody can Google something and find the answer. I need to change the oil in my car. I found a wonderful YouTube video of it on how to change the oil in my car. And then I decided, you know what? This is really messy. I'm going to go have somebody else do it. I'll pay the money to do that, right? That's a situation that we all face. How are we going to take this knowledge and apply it to create something that doesn't already exist, right? If you're an entrepreneur, if you're just an Amazon affiliate reseller who's selling something that anybody else can sell, sure, you might be able to make a little bit of money, but eventually it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
Eventually, if Amazon deems it, I just read a story the other day about how they use predatory pricing to drive diapers.com out of business so that they could corner the diaper market for whatever reason they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So you're a little fish in a very, very gigantic pond, and one little rogue wave can wipe you out. But if you can create stuff that's actually somewhat proprietary, right, that you or maybe only a handful of people have because of the originality side of it, that's really compelling. It's a nice place to be.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So moving into the last couple of questions, firstly, what about those days where it all goes horribly wrong and you have a terrible day? How do you deal with that?
I go play golf. That's what I do.
I think you're the first person to say that, actually.
Yeah, I'm not joking. I'm a very good golfer. I'm like a 9 handicap. The reason is if I have a bad day, I go play. I go work on my game. If you have to recognize, it's funny, as a trader, I trade the markets every day. It's the futures. The futures market is the last thing I see before I go to bed and the first thing I see when I wake up. I mean, it just is. And I have market homework that I do every day before the trading day starts. And I ask myself 5 simple questions. This was taught to me by a friend of mine who's a master trader and an author and was also raised in the old USSR as a psychiatrist. So he understands the psychology of trading and the psychology of business. And so I ask myself the 5 questions and I get one of 3 answers. Green light, go ahead and trade. Amber light, trade, but be cautious. You're not in the best frame of mind. Red light, no trade, right? So if it is a no trade day, even if a trade lands on my lap and screams at me to trade it, I don't trade it. I do other stuff. I'll read reports. I'll do this. I'll work on my watch list, whatever it might be. It's the same way. The rules of the stoplight, they apply to life as well, right? If you're not in a sober, calm, nice place, don't do anything important. Go play golf. Go fishing. Go clear your mind. Last thing you want to do is force a situation to happen when you are not in the right frame of mind. That's a prescription for really bad outcomes.
Yes. Yeah.
Again,
yeah.
I'm oversimplifying this, right? Because people say, well, every day I wake up, I'm having a terrible day. I can't play golf every day.
Yeah.
I can't afford to do that. Hopefully that's not your life. If that is your life, that's a whole nother thing.
Yes.
Right? That's if every day it's like, oh, I can't stand this. This is awful. That's the universe telling you need to reevaluate stuff.
Yeah.
All the golf in the world isn't going to help that. You are doing something, I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use it, wrong. Something is amiss. That needs to be attended to. Hire a professional, get a support group, whether it's something in the entrepreneurial world or your personal world or whatever it might be. Get help, because there are tens of thousands of people who live and breathe helping other people. Go find them. Yes, they will cost money. It'll be the best money you ever spent.
And the last question, what about those days when you get to live more? So that's where I talk about getting to do more of the things that you want to do and less of the stuff that you don't want to do. What do those days look like for you?
Wow, I'm probably still on the golf course. No, I'm kidding. I'm an adventurer. I like to do different stuff. I can't really do the stuff that I want to do now because of the pandemic. So I feel, a little bit handcuffed. But when I remind people, my kids will complain about it and stuff. And it's like, just remember how privileged you are just to live in this time, this space and time that we're living in. Pandemic or no pandemic, we're to a large degree really blessed. But assuming that ends at some particular point in time, I like to go out and explore, travel, adventures, anything that I'm curious about. I want to learn more. Yes. Right. Yeah. I want to meet cool, interesting people, travel to different places, have fun adventures. And they can all be different. Just like every day is different, every adventure can be different. Right? Yeah. Well, thanks, Henry. It's been great talking to you. Tell people how they can find out more about you and get in contact. I have a vanity site, Henry Daas, HenryDaas.com. And that has links to a whole bunch of, different stuff, my screenplays, all my business stuff, my baseball card collection, my little golf adventures, just, silly stuff. My main business is my primary business as a business coach is Daas Knowledge, DAAS Knowledge, or if you misspell it, DASS Knowledge, it'll still take you there. Very good. All the time. Got to be belts and braces. Yes. And there's stuff about financial literacy. There's a bunch of giveaways. I give away my book. So if you want to download my 432-page book called FQ Financial Intelligence, everything you need to know about how to manage and grow your money, it's in there. It's a freebie, coupon for 100% off. Can't beat that. That's it. Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks, Henry. Thanks for joining me. Thank you. All this information is available in the show notes. If you go to powertolivemore.com / in this case 176, then you'll find them there. And this week, I'd just like to talk about the networking meeting that we had on Monday and the fact that we were talking about business books. And as you can imagine, even with a few people at the meeting, there were absolutely tons of books mentioned. So I'm not going to talk about them all, but we were just generally talking about how
when you find a really good business book, it can be so useful for you within your business, within your life, if you're thinking about personal development and so on. And we also talked about how sometimes books seem to waffle their way around some key points and actually last about 3 times as long as they should. So not all business books are a great read, although some people were talking about perhaps using something like Blinkist to just read summaries of books, or using something like Audible to listen to the audio version of books rather than reading them. But just to give you a flavour of some of the things we talked about, one of the members talked about Alan Pease's book Body Language, which is quite an old book now but still really valuable. I mentioned the Productivity Ninja book by Graham Alcott, who's one of the guests that we've had on the show. One of my favourite business books is The Slight Edge, which is all about taking really small daily actions consistently and the sort of compound effect that you get of continuing to take those small actions day by day. And, you know, as long as they're positive, then the trajectory of development goes up. Obviously, the opposite applies. That if you take small daily actions that are having a negative effect, then the impact of that gets bigger and bigger as time goes on as well. So that's The Slight Edge. We mentioned the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, I think, which I've gifted to some of my members in recent months because it's such a good book. And I also remembered at the last minute Gretchen Rubin, who has written a number of books, but one of the ones that I found really helpful is one called The Four Tendencies, where she talks about sort of your motivation for getting things done, and if you understand which tendency you have, then it's much easier to work out how to stop procrastinating. So for example, one of them, I think it's an obliger, is the one where external accountability can be really important. So once you know that, then creating some form of external accountability for the work that you're doing can be really helpful. Another one that was mentioned on the podcast only a few weeks ago by Sue Heddo, I think, is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, which I'm in the middle of reading at the moment. And one that's connected to that is The Power of When, which is all about different chronotypes, different types of people in terms of when you need to sleep. So that's the lion, the wolf, the bear, and the dolphin. And then once you've identified which of those you are, the rest of the book talks about the best time to do things based on that, hence the title, The Power of When. So the best time to make a decision, the best time to have a nap, the best time to drink coffee, the best time to work on some really important work or whatever it might be. So that can be really helpful as well. So there were tons of books that we talked about, and far too many, as I say, for me to mention, but they're all listed, of course, on the show notes, not the show notes at all, on the summary post that I do each week from the networking event. So if you do want to come and join Counterpoint Networking 2:00 on a Monday afternoon, then you can have a look and see what else we were talking about at that last meeting. And next week we're talking about online programs, so that's the 21st of September. As I said, the show notes are at powertolivemore.com/176, and we look forward to speaking to you next week.
Use your power to live more.